So, good morning, Wake Forest Baptist family. With the news these days, we're tempted to want to think of Russia as our enemy. But all over Russia are people who are our brothers and sisters in Christ. And I want to share a good story about what happened in Russia. It's a story about the power of prayer as told by Max Lucado. And I'm going to have to read it. It's kind of long, but it's such a great story. Christians in Russia experienced systemic persecution from the communist government for decades. School teachers would hold up a Bible and ask kindergarten students if they had seen such a book in their homes. If a student said yes, a government official would then visit the family. Pastors, lay people were imprisoned, never to be heard from again. The government required pastors to visit their offices once a week to report on any new visitors. Pastors were required to present sermon topics for approval. This was the world in which a man, Dmitri, practiced his faith. He and his family lived in a small village just a few hours outside of Moscow. The nearest church was a 3-day walk, making it impossible for them to attend churches more than twice a year. Dmitri began to teach his family Bible stories. Went on and on. I'm going to skip over some. But anyway, he ended up being in jail because he was continuing to be faithful to the word. Each morning at daybreak, Dmitri stood by his bed, faced eastward, raised his arms to God, and sang a song of praise. Other prisoners would jeer, but still he would sing. Whenever he found a scrap of paper, he scribbled down a verse from a story that he remembered. When the paper was completely filled, he took it to the corner of his cell and affixed it to a damp pillar as a sacrifice to Jesus. Officials routinely spotted the papers, removed them, and beat Dmitri. Still, he worshiped. This went on for 17 years. On only one occasion did he nearly recant his faith. Guards convinced him that his wife had been murdered and his children were wards of the state. The thought was more than Dmitri could bear. He agreed to renounce his faith in Christ. The guards told him they would return the next day with a document. All he had to do was sign it, and he would be released. The officials were sure of their victory. What they didn't know was this: when believing people pray, great things happen. Believing people were praying for Dmitri. 1,000 kilometers away, that night his family sensed a special burden to pray for him. They knelt in a circle and interceded passionately for his protection. Miraculously, the Lord allowed Dmitri to hear the voice of his loved one as they prayed. He knew that they were safe. The next morning, when the guards called for his signature, they saw a renewed man. His face was calm, his eyes were resolute. "I'm not signing anything," he told them. "In the night, God let me hear the voices of my wife and my children and my brother praying for me. You lied to me. I now know that my wife is alive and physically well. I know that my sons are with her. I also know that they are all still in Christ, so I'm not signing anything." The officials beat him and threatened to execute him, but Dmitri's resolve only increased. He still worshiped in the mornings and posted verses on the pillar. Finally, the authorities had all they could take. They dragged him from his cell through the corridor in the center of the prison toward the place of execution. As they did, 1,500 criminals raised their hands and began to sing the songs of praise that they had heard Dmitri singing each morning. The jailers released their hold on him and stopped back. Who are you?" He replied, "I'm a son of the living God, and Jesus is his name." Dmitri was taken back to his cell. Sometime later, he was released and returned to his family. You're not going to find yourself in a Russian prison, but maybe this day you find yourself in some situation that feels impossible. You feel outnumbered and outmaneuvered, perhaps. You want to quit. So let me ask you and implore you to memorize the promise and ask God to bring it to mind on that day. And the promise and the truth is this: when a believing person prays, great things happen. So this is a story from Russia, a story of testimony. It can be your story as well, whatever prison you feel like you're in these days. When you pray, things happen. So God bless you.